Because
Okay.
the world today is so dynamic. Because who would have thought that a bank manager would have been out there selling cabbages? Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought, that, that the guys who had been employed with flashy jobs? But the truth of it is, if you look at it differently, the informal sector in all over the world, it begs one question: can you bring it to order? Can you bring it to order, whatever it is that you're selling, whether it is cabbages, whether it is a business, whatever it is that you're selling? Can you bring it to order? So if you can bring it to order, and you can assimilate it into the value chain, so that now you have a person selling cabbages, you have a person delivering cabbages, you have a person who can package the packages to the cabbages to sell them elsewhere. And I'm seeing right now, the true intellectual is a person who will bring all those things together. Yeah, I'm so interested in today's class, by the way. I am.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I can see quite a number of you that have come through. Mr. Wekoba is in already. Mr. Kamau is in already, and we are set for the discussion tonight. John will be my co-host, and it's always a pleasure hosting you. I've seen quite a number of people that I cannot acknowledge everyone, but I want to acknowledge my former chairman in the bank, and it's such a pleasure always having connecting with the people that made me who I am. Mr. Roger Wekoba, kindly confirm that you are in. I can see you, so just confirm that I can get you through. I know you're connecting from Masai Mara. Hi, Roger. Okay, just trying to get connect. All right, let me confirm Kamau. Mr. Kamau, can you hear me? As you can see, Roger is trying to connect his audio. All right, Mr. Kamau is connecting from Nyandarua. I hope my panelists will be able to come through. Roger, can you hear me? I can see you, but I can't hear you. All right, this is called technology. All right, I'm just getting Wekoba to come through. As Wekoba comes through, let me just again journey one more time. Please bear with them. I think this was a really technical itch for them. Where Wekoba had confirmed to me that he was traveling to to Masai Mara, and he arrived just a few minutes ago, and then we are trying to get him connected. So Johnny, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Johnny, even as we prepare, because I know tonight we may have a very interesting discussion on this matter, this issue of manufacturing. When you look at,
True.
and I know you are in a very interesting region of Nakuru. When you look at Nakuru has been, decided to be a very, interesting zone for manufacturing, and especially dairy farming and all that. What support do you think Kenyans would require from government right at this moment of time?
Of course, the usual support would be in the area of funding, but also apart from funding, there is still the ordering. You see, like now we are in the Kibaki era, we had zero-rated machines, so importing machines was that much easier for the manufacturing sector. So we would see that as a need. And then also, if you look at now, like areas such as the waste paper management and waste management, if that was done in proper legislature now with the parliament and so on, it can help the ordinary mwananchi have a way to enter into the industry, so that there is not so much bureaucracy. If for example, I want to recycle plastic or something of the nature, and we have huge waste, huge waste dump sites, but I can't just walk in there and put up something, Yeah, so I'm just thinking a lot more, apart from just funding, just entry, putting that low entry, so that any mwananchi can just walk in there and put up a machine and recycle. I think that would be the easiest way to do it, apart from funding, that is. And also we have other industries like the dairy farming and so on, Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. I have Roger. Roger is in already. Hi, Roger. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. We are good. We've been waiting for you. Sorry for the long journey. And with technology now, you'll not have to travel so long. So, Roger, I want to introduce you to the panel, to the plenary. Roger has been with us in the past discussions, and after that, people requested that we do these discussions on manufacturing. Manufacturing is a very wide topic, but I would want, Roger, you introduce yourself and give us, just an intro of what you've been doing with the Kenya School of Industrialization. Kindly come through and take us through that.
Good evening, panel. Sorry for keeping you guys waiting. I was on a trip, but I thank God at least I arrived safely. Just a brief, my name is Roger Wehomba. I'm the founder of Kenya School of Industrialization, whose vision and mission is to empower Kenyans to industrialize themselves one mind at a time. We started way back in 2012, and we've been pursuing this training agenda under the mantra, industrialize yourself. I'm also the founder of a company called Soap Masters. We manufacture organic soaps. We also do tamarind paste. And I think our core business has been and continues to be to empower people. And that's even the very reason why I'm in Masai Mara at the moment, just to empower the community on value addition.
Fantastic. Roger, we are talking about manufacturing, industrializing Africa. I've read your book about Industrialize Africa. Yes. Kindly tell us, what is this thing we are talking about, manufacturing and industrializing Africa? Maybe you can break it down in simple terms. The people here will understand what are we talking about manufacturing.
Now, when you look at any developed nation, right from the US, China, Malaysia, you look at the UK, Germany, all these economies have been developed on the foundation of manufacturing, that is industrialization. Now, that is one area that Africa has shied away from, and it has what I would call foundational issues. It just stems from the education system that we are given. Now, one thing that keeps troubling me is that the Western world knows that the solution to developing an economy is manufacturing. Yet in the education system and the curriculum that we have, there is no subject on industrialization. So which means that is something they intentionally hid from us. Now, when you look at Africa, it's the largest in terms of natural resource endowment, yet we are the poorest. Now, when you go to the Bible, there's a place where it says that in the fallow ground of a poor man, there is much waste because of lack of justice. Now, show me a poor man. Once I locate his land, I will find riches there. Now, when you look at Africa, Africa is poor because we have not utilized the resources that God has given to us. Now, there is no part of this continent that God did not create with any resource, any part. Now, Geoffrey, if I'd given you a piece of Turkana 20 years ago, you would have said no. But right now, Turkana, everybody wants to go there because there is a resource that was discovered there. Now, every part of Africa that is languishing in poverty is languishing in poverty because they have not identified the resource that they have. Now, manufacturing has been, they've made manufacturing to look to us as if it is rocket science. Yet there is nothing very complex when it comes to manufacturing. So our mission has been to demystify manufacturing so that people can be able to realize, we break it down to the person in the village. Now, when you look at the Vision 2030, for instance, it does not, when you read through, you don't see the participation of the individual Kenyan. How do you fit in as an individual? How does Mama Wanjiku or Mama Mboga from the village can be able to fit in? Now, our mission is to break it down to the common person so that you're able to see, using your sufuria or your cooking stick, you are able to process even the tomato in your house and be able to make tomato paste, to make ketchup, You are able to use your sufuria and your cooking stick to be able to make jam from the house and to be able to package it and be able to sell it to the market. Now, unless Africa embraces...
Roger, now you've just gotten to the gist of this. Just before you get to the what, all right? Because that is very interesting. I know how you make your soaps, and I'm coming to that. Maybe just back to where the point you mentioned about Africa, right? We are in a season right now of COVID-19, all right? We do not know how things will go. Before you came through, I had mentioned to Johnny that we have had the president, and especially on 1st May during the Labor Day, talk about over 500,000 jobs, that people stand to lose. We have had it in America, we have had it in Europe, we've had it everywhere. So even those that think they can run to Europe and Australia for jobs, the Australians and the Europeans are also looking for the same jobs. So the competition for the white collar jobs will be very high. Do you think it is time for people to turn and think industrialization, think manufacturing? Do you think so? And if so, what should someone do to now direct themselves towards manufacturing? Kindly take us to that bit of where to start.
Thank you, Geoffrey. That is a very good question. Now, just before COVID-19, there are a lot of people who thought that there was what we call job security. But companies that you wouldn't even imagine have been laying off their workers without any feelings at all. A lot of workers have been sent on unpaid leave. Now that shows that there is a lot of job insecurity. Now the education system that we have has trained us to be what we call job seekers and not wealth creators. Now, you've seen even just during the period of the COVID-19, you saw the high level of innovation and creativity that the Kenyans were engaging, even right from children in primary school, innovating, coming up with the very, very great innovations. But the question is, how many of those innovations have been profiled? How many have been documented? What kind of support can the government give to the next level? And I will mention the same thing that I mentioned last time, that if we continue to wait on the government to do everything for us, we will die poor. So what I can challenge everybody right now is that unless Africa chooses industrialization, we will remain poor forever. We must choose to industrialize. Now, for me, I take COVID as an opportunity for Africa, so that we need to begin to look at our environment seriously and look at it and say, what is it that God has given to us that we can take advantage of right now? Now, when you look at the statistics, for example, Geoffrey, tomato paste and, let me say tomato products that were imported from Turkey, Dubai, and Saudi Arabia in the past, that is 2019, was in the tune of 700 million. Now, yet tomatoes are being thrown in Gikomba, tomatoes are being thrown on every market, and all that a young person can do is take those tomatoes and using a sufuria, they're able to process tomato paste and tomato sauce. Now, what we need to engage is, can we profile the imports that are coming in, even from the counties? You look at a lot of counties are importing stuff from Nairobi, and yet the young people in the villages are jobless. So those are opportunities in terms of import substitution, industrialization. We need to profile and document what is it that is being imported in the country, what is it that is being imported into the county, and how can we break that manufacturing process and simplify it to the kitchen level. So the solution here will be cottage industrialization. Now, cottage industrialization, the entry levels are very minimal. You find that with 2,000 shillings, 3,000 shillings, one can be able to start. Buy, for example, if you're doing jam, buy five pineapples, buy 2 kilos of sugar, buy bottles worth 1,000 shillings, make labels worth 500 shillings, and you are off to start. So what we're lacking in this country is just access to knowledge. And I think what our young people need to do is to change their attitude. Because, Geoffrey, I will shock you, if we call for a meeting for value addition and industrialization for free, don't even charge, you'll be shocked the number of young people who will opt to come. Yet you'll find that the majority of them will just be seated in the estates, just basking in the sun and talking and saying, blaming the government, oh, there are no jobs, what are we going to do? So we need to also, as a nation, we need to humble ourselves. And we need to just start low, look at where we are, accept where we are. We don't need a lot of money. Start from where we are. I think that is the solution that we need to embrace. But the potential is there, the opportunity is there.
Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you very much for that introduction. Just introduction. Now, let me just guide the discussion. Like I said when I was starting, kindly, you can drop a question that you have on industrialization, on manufacturing, break it down to the level where you are. What do you want to understand about manufacturing and industrialization? You can use the chat room. Like I said, I may not get all questions or people asking question verbally. Please type your question. Anything that you want to know about industrialization and manufacturing. If you have started Geoffrey, something, yes.
Geoffrey, can I just keep their minds? Eh?
Okay, please do.
Let me just mention this. This is a very powerful revelation that I got. Now, devolution, devolution was a blessing to us as a nation.
Devolution.
Now, if I could ask you this question, who is the biggest beneficiary of devolution? Are you able to answer that question?
All right, interesting. It has been thrown to everyone. Who is the beneficiary of devolution?
Yeah, as you ponder on that, let me pose it as a rhetorical question, but let me answer it all the same. It is said that about 300 billion goes to the counties every year.
Come up again, how much?
About 300 billion goes to the counties every year.
That's a good figure.
Now, it says that 80% of that goes to salaries, which comes to about 240 billion. To the tune of around 240 billion goes to salaries. Now, it is said that about 80% of the salary of a civil servant goes to the supermarket. So we are talking about 140 billion going to the supermarket every year. Now, the question I ask is, who owns the products on the supermarket shelf?
All right.
Yeah, so
interesting.
If the native Africans do not have the products on the supermarket shelves, then they are not the beneficiaries of devolution. Now, the reality is our brothers and sisters from the Asian community who have entrenched themselves in the manufacturing sector are the greatest beneficiaries of devolution. And that is why you find that wealth is not being created even in the counties. So for me, I feel that
continue.
Those are very naked statistics that we need to look at critically and just challenge ourselves from that. And I think that will give us the bedrock from which we can start tackling this issue of unemployment, poverty, and wealth creation, even from the grassroots levels.
Awesome. Everyone, and this is for all of us. We are talking about manufacturing. There are those that are on Facebook Live and those that are in here. The ones that are on Facebook Live, please, you can type your question. There's someone who is tracking. I have my co-host, Johnny, who is tracking what people are asking on Facebook Live. And also, right here, you can ask your question. Now, the discussion we have tonight, and Roger Wekoba, I brought him because he was with us when we were talking about agribusiness. And we discussed agribusiness from the point of exports and, just doing agriculture or farming for business or for profits. Because for so long we did agribusiness or agriculture actually as a leisure or even something for the people who are in the upcountry. But now it has come to to a point where we need to do things intentionally. And whether that is agriculture or farming, or whether that thing we are doing is making soap. And I'm coming to what you're doing, Wekoba, because people here need to hear the true story on where you can start from scratch. I listened to Wekoba on how he started doing making soap in his house with a sufuria, and it really made me want to know how did it happen. And that is where I'm bringing Wekoba to discuss now. Wekoba, please tell us. Do you need much money, or how much money do you need to start a manufacturing company? You started your own soap making business from the house with a sufuria. How possible is that? Because people are asking, how is it possible to start with the little that you have? Please take us through the journey of how you started.
Now, Okay, for the soap business, I started from the house. Okay, of course, I didn't have the resources at that time. That time, I was unemployed. I'd lost my job, and I tried a business which I lost a lot of money, and I really wanted to start something afresh. So I had an interest in soap, and just started from the house. Started with a liter of oil. Of course, the training, the R&D was it took me about 2 or 3 years just to try
and development.
Yeah, the research and development to get the recipe. And once I got the recipe, I started small. I started with about 2 liters of coconut oil, a liter of olive oil. And then slowly I started making the soaps and selling to friends using word of mouth. And as the business grew, eventually it grew into a company that I registered. And right now we have the client base is growing wide. So what I can encourage people, a good example is there is a training that I was doing, and I wanted to teach them on value adding the tomato, making tomato paste and tomato sauces. Now I went to the market, I went to Mlolongo market to a lady who was selling tomatoes. And I found the tomatoes that were, they're not bad, but they're quashed and they're broken. They call them vunjika. So I bought a whole, half a sack for 100 shillings. I went to the house, I cleaned the tomatoes, I sorted them out, what was clean. I value added, I made tomato sauce and tomato paste. And Geoffrey, just to shock you, the following morning when I went to the training, the products I made, out of 100 shillings, I sold, my sales was 12,000 shillings. Now the process, when you look at the equipment that I used a sufuria, I used a knife, and I used a sieve. Now all those things you'll find in every house, you'll find them. Now, what our people are lacking is just the information, the know-how on how to make some of these things, and that is what we do in Kenya School of Industrialization. If you want to make candy, all you need is just a sufuria, and you need fire. If you want to make tomato sauce, you need a sufuria, you need a sieve, you need a knife. Most of these things you can do from the kitchen. What I do is when I go to a supermarket, I look at any product and I challenge myself: can I make this from the house? Then I break down the processes, and eventually I find as I try them out, I'm able to do that application. There are so many things that I've been able to do. You can process chili, you can process tomato sauce, you can process peanut butter, you can do from the house, you can make soap, you can make, recently there's a lady who commissioned me. She was telling that the amount of money that Indomie is making, I mean, Indomie comes in almost 2 billion imports from Nigeria annually. That's a lot of money. So she was asking me, is it possible to make noodles from potatoes? And I said, let me try it out. And shockingly, I came up with a very amazing product. And the process is simple. You have just to mix the dough, the potato flour, mix with a little wheat flour, and then knead it, cut with a knife, pre-boil, and then there you have the noodles. You dry them, and they're ready to eat. I also made a sauce to go with that. So the whole thing is just about creativity, about innovation, and the most important thing is to have the willpower and the desire to be able to engage it. Because manufacturing is easy. Because when you are taught, when you go through our classes, you see, oh, you mean it's this simple. But now the biggest challenge is how do you convert that into a business? Because Geoffrey, if I make a product, it's just a piece of art. It only becomes a business when I'm able to give it to somebody in exchange for money. So for all those who are hearing, and they're interested in at least pursuing something, we are there to assist them. We are there to work with them with the journey to be able to identify an opportunity and then show you how you can start from your house and then grow it into a business. But now the willpower has to be there.
Just before you go to that, we are coming into the how to commercialize our products. But before then, let me bring Johnny. Johnny, do you have something that you need to throw into the into the discussion? Maybe from questions that are coming.
Yes, a lot of discussion going on the Facebook side, and also on our chat. Irene is asking a very important question. She's asking, how do you deal with competition with an already existing market, within an already existing market? And I'm imagining just the example you've given about Indomie, and how it's a big company even with the imports and so on. So at the entry level, with new cottage industry bringing in that, how do you compete against the big giants? So that's Irene. We're also having a a very interesting discussion going on the Facebook side, and guys are talking about, and they're saying, manufacturing doesn't seem to be quite like rocket science. It seems very easy, but how can we break it down further? So maybe we can start with Irene's question, and then we can go on to the other one. Yeah.
All right. So if there are two questions here: how to make manufacturing easy, and how to commercialize the manufacturing. Then how to compete with the market, with the competition. We know that there are two competitions here that we need to talk about. The first competition is the imports, all right, which actually has killed the local manufacturing. The local industry has been killed by imports. We know that. You're already talking about noodles that are coming from China. We know about processed fish that come from China. We know about sugar. We know about all this. These are manufacturing products that we could do, or we could make locally. But the competition is both imports and also local competition. How can we start, and how can a manufacturer grow from a small scale to even become a competitor in the big market? That is a very important question. Then you now talk about, that is competition. Then you talk about, how can I grow? Because competition will always come in if I can address the question of how can I grow. Please, Wekoba.
Okay, let me start with the issue of competition. One of the things is that Indomie is produced in Nigeria, and I am producing from Nairobi or from Kenya using local resources. Naturally, there is no way that Indomie is supposed to be more competitive than I. That is one angle that you can look at. Now, one way to look at that, the competition, is there are two ways to come up. For me, I usually say the competitive strategy. There's usually either price competitive strategy, where you can make your product to be more competitive price-wise. Secondly, there can be the element of the quality competitive strategy, where, for example, the Indomie that I'm working on, the noodles, they are fortified noodles. They are more nutritious, they're more healthy, because we are using organic products that are available locally. That would be one strategy. Now, the other issues like what I call patriotism. Now, my latest book is called Neglected Value. One of the topics that I've written there is neglected patriotism, where we need to come up as people and begin to appreciate the local content. When somebody has manufactured something locally, we need to support that person by, instead of buying the Indomie, I should buy a noodle that has been made by a local young person. So that is patriotism. We also need to love our products. Then the other thing we'll also look at is, that's now a government thing, where we need to put our legislators to task. That is what we call infant protectionism. Now, when you look at when they were starting up, the government had to come in with legislation to protect the infant industries, because one of these, the large multinationals can easily choke you out of the market. So government must also come in with legislation, this being both at the national government and the county government, to come in with legislation that will be able to protect some of the upcoming manufacturers. Now, this comes in terms of, for example, taxation, the tax levels, give tax windows to young people, give them access to loans that are maybe either in terms of zero-rated interests, but something that will cushion them and make it easy for them. Now, the most critical part is the marketing part of it is the supermarkets. Now, that is the biggest challenge that startups have, getting their products listed on the supermarket. Now, my recommendation even in that book has been that the government should now come in and introduce legislation where it says, for example, 30% of all supermarket shelf space must be dedicated to startup companies. Now, that 30% shelf space should also come with conditions that if I supply a supermarket, then the credit period must be very short. If I'm supplying, then if my products are sold, within 2 weeks, I must be paid. Now, the challenge is, if you supply supermarkets nowadays, they'll tell you they'll pay you after 90 days. You go there after 90 days, they say, okay, come for the check in 2 weeks. 2 weeks time, they give you a check that is post-dated for another 2 weeks. So it's taken you 4 months. Now, if somebody says you supply a truckload, and yet you do not have that capacity to do that, that limits you again. So that, for me, I feel those are the things that need to come into place. But the biggest thing when you're starting up is you need to have a good customer service relationship, have a good product, price it well, and then talk to people. Have people support you as you start up and then grow it up. Secondly, to access manufacturing. Yeah.
Just before you move on from competition, before you move on from out of competition, the question is, and we know that the government goodwill may not come as soon, all right? Yeah. That is a reality that we all have to wake up to. We do not know when the government will clear these corruption issues and support the local manufacturer, but we have to start somewhere. And there's what you're calling, I've forgotten the word that you've used, but I'm looking at Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, or buy what is made in Kenya. And I saw something that was circulating today, a very nice seat that is foldable, all right? And I shared it on my my class platform. And someone said actually there, why can't we buy what has been made in Kenya? The question is, Wekoba, do you think Kenyans trust what is made in Kenya? Because I have many people here. I can see quite a number of CEOs and chairmen of serious organizations right here in this platform. And also others are watching on Facebook and others will watch later. What can we do to push the quest for people to support the local manufacturer? Because that is very critical, Wekoba. How can we push that agenda without looking at the government?
Thank you. Now, what has been my philosophy when I'm training people is, number one, when you're making a product, make a product that you'll be comfortable, that your own children will consume and use the product, and you'll be comfortable with that. Now, this brings us to the element of product excellence in product quality, excellence in packaging, so that even if you're selling something that has been made locally, let people trust what you're making. Now, the challenge has been the people who started out in the cottage industry were doing things that were not of good quality. They were substandard quality, and they created that phobia that people kind of relate what is manufactured locally to be low quality product. Now, when you look at the soaps that we make, for example, I will use my own example. One of the things that we have, the philosophy is we don't compromise on quality. We use the best ingredients, and the product there has to be consistency. If you bought a soap 5 years ago and you buy today, you'll get the same experience, if not better. Now, that way, if we can create that culture, people will begin to trust and be comfortable with what is manufactured locally. Now, the other most important thing that I would like to mention is how do we, as startups, be able to succeed? Now, what has been succeeding right now and what is going on and is growing is the online market. Now, if the supermarkets do not want to take our products, my philosophy is, can we cut off the client? Can I get to the client before the client gets to the supermarket? Now, the online platform has come in so forcefully and has been very effective for a lot of startup companies, startup mini business manufacturers. So we can utilize the online platforms. And this also gives the young people who are in IT, young people who are in marketing, an opportunity to be able to create businesses for them. There is this business, for example, Trigger Foods has been very successful on that, using the online platform to market the agri products. We also want to see a lot of innovative young people coming up with online supermarkets so that they can list a lot of these young cottage industries and be able to market their products online. And I think this way we can be able to solve that challenge of entry to the supermarkets. I don't know whether that answers the question.
No, that does, and I'm actually coming to it. May be one of the questions before after I get from to hear from Johnny, because we may not all go into manufacturing, but within the value chain, someone may fit. There's someone who is watching and listening here who is possibly waiting to hear. Is someone manufacturing so that I can market? or is that someone manufacturing so I can supply the raw material? So within the value chain, and I'm coming back to that, we need to understand how can people fit within the value chain and still benefit, in the manufacturing industry. So let me go to Johnny right now. Johnny, do we have something we need to answer right now?
There's a bit of a controversy on the retail market, because we understand that the supermarket is within the framework of the retail market, and the larger part of the retail market actually belongs to the small shops, like in the mashinani, because majority of Kenya's population, especially, let me just talk about Kenya, majority of Kenya's population doesn't exist within the urban centers. They are within the rural settings. And so what we have down there is the market share for the supermarket would actually be at 30% or slightly just above that. And what you have therefore is an opportunity, because with the small shops, of course, the distribution of the shops is very wide, so you can't get to them. But it provides a very good opportunity for the person starting in the cottage industry to directly go to the shops. And particularly, let me just tell you about the bakery, like the people who are getting into bakery. If you look at how the supply chain goes from the bakery to directly to the shops, they don't actually go very of the baking products get to the supermarket. In fact, if you look at Kenya's population and you look at maybe the urban centers would be more acute to going to the supermarkets, but in the rural settings, like even here in Nakuru, most guys shop in the local shop in the neighborhood. So that also is a huge opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. That's a good point, and I think Wekoba, you'll also react to that. How can we also benefit within the retail market? Now, today I would want to get maybe comments from the from the team or from the plenary. One or two. I will actually choose just a maximum of 3. So if you have a very burning comment that you would want to contribute towards the manufacturing discussion, you can do that. You can lift your hand. Of course, technology has shown us how to lift our hand. You can lift your hand from the system, and I will see, then I can pick you to make a comment. But Wekoba, let's come back to you. In terms of the value chain, I may not go into manufacturing. I may not go to grow tomatoes, but I would want to make tomato sauce, okay? I may not want to make tomato sauce, but I would want to sell tomato sauce. So within the value chain, like Johnny is saying, how can one identify the opportunities in there? And you've mentioned, just don't forget that, you've mentioned Twiga Farm, Twiga Food. In fact, I was trying to get Mr. Peter Jojo to come to our discussion today, just that he could not find time. And he has been even voted as one of the top CEOs in Africa who are doing disruptive innovation. So question is, how can we identify the opportunity within the value chain? Please break it down for us.
I'll bring it back to statistics. Huh? Mm-hmm. Figures don't lie. As long as they're real figures don't lie. Yeah? Now, what we also need to do as a nation is we need to profile our resources county-wise. There has to be real-time statistics on what is the potential and what are we producing, what are the gaps, then what commodities are we importing into our regions. Those are figures that can inform us on opportunities that we can take. Let me give you an example. Last year, 2019, we imported animal feeds worth $41 million. Imported pasta worth $25 million. Imported tomato paste, tomato sauce worth 500 million Kenya shillings. Imported onions worth 1.2 billion. Imported sorghum worth 32 million Kenya shillings. Now, these are opportunities that we are seeing that why are we importing this from other nations? Yet we have arable land that can be able to do that. Now, when it comes to value chain analysis, we need to look at, for example, the opportunities that every region has. When you identify the opportunity that, for example, our region can grow this, but our region can grow tomatoes, and we need a factory to process that. It's just an issue of leadership and organization. If I'm going to do the production, then I need somebody to do the growing. So this can come into, for example, mobilizing youth groups. Can we identify, say, for example, the tomato value chain? Where do I plug in? I'm plugging in manufacturing. Can somebody else plug in the production? Can somebody else plug in at supplying the chemicals that will do the spraying? Can somebody else plug in at the marketing level of it? So I think it's an issue that we need to be very deliberate and identify the value chains that are existing in terms of potential and real. And then be able, in terms of interest, plug ourselves into those value chains. But unless we do that, we need to, first of all, profile the resources. And then once we profile the resources, let's analyze and interrogate what is the opportunity, where can I plug in myself? I think that is where we need to start.
Very interesting. And I'm going to get back to Johnny because I know maybe he has questions that are coming. When we talk about opportunities, we've seen Rivertex. We have seen Kitui, the Kitui Textile. I can't remember the name exactly. We saw them, jump into the opportunity of, making masks and during the COVID-19 outbreak. So, are we able, as young people, as startups, are we able to connect with the existing factories right now, and also become suppliers of maybe raw material? And we are talking about, the government also launched the size of plantations that need to be, to be developed. People need to grow sisal. Are we able to connect with the existing? Because the startup issue is still a big deal. People are being laid off. Some of these people have never saved. They need to start somewhere. Are there existing factories or existing manufacturing companies that you think you can recommend people to connect with right now that they can benefit from? That is number one. Number two, if someone here is a CEO or a business development manager of a company, what would you recommend for them to do as a big opportunity currently? Let's talk about now. What would you recommend as a big opportunity right now in manufacturing industry? Those two questions, Wekoba.
Now, okay, I believe as long as a company is doing the manufacturing, one of the key questions is where do I get the resources, the raw materials? Now you realize that a lot of these companies are importing the raw materials. Now you ask yourself, for example, if they are importing textiles, are we able to grow cotton? Now history tells us that we used to grow cotton. We have the history of the Kikomis that had some of the best cotton in the world. Now, what happened to that industry? It went down. Now, the question is, how can we revive that, even from our own levels? And I think at this point where we need to look at to revive the cooperative movement, which was very helpful in terms of building the muscle and the capacity to revive that sector. Now, as individuals, we can look at how do we organize ourselves. Say, for example, if you come from a cotton growing area, can you mobilize yourself as people or farmers to begin to grow in a small scale, and then form your own cooperative to be able to market your product to the guys who are, for example, the manufacturers who will be the uptakers of that raw material. And I think the other thing that I also want to mention is for the CEOs and the managers of, for example, financial institutions and SACCO who may be listening, that is a challenge to them. There is a huge opportunity to invest in youth industrialization. The biggest challenge is no one is willing to fund a startup. But I want to believe that they can come up with innovative packages where they can be able to invest in startup industrialization so that these industries can grow. You find that if they can invest in these young people, in the next 2 or 3 years, you find that the level of these small companies will have grown. And I think we'll have to go to another level.
Okay. Fair enough. Johnny, do we have something before we are almost coming to a close?
Yes. The thing is, I'm seeing opportunities. I'm just wondering how to tap them. Like now, the announcements they keep making, like the other day they were talking about 22 counties signing up a deal with Rivertex to be supplying cotton. And I'm wondering, okay, yes, there's a cotton, there's the supplying cotton, but I'm also looking at it from the point of view of supplying services, because if maybe I'm in the fashion industry, I might not be able to open a factory, but I may be able to supply maybe like 30 or 40 what do you call them, tailors. You know? So I'm just wondering, in other counties, like maybe if I was to go to Kitui, for example, is it possible for me to set up a toilet paper manufacturing plant there on a small scale where there is not so much competition? Something like that, yeah.
All right. Well, Koba, you've heard that, and just to throw a spanner into the works. When we talk about value chain, there's marketing. And I think Twiga Food have done a fantastic job with marketing, and especially getting the farmer to be noticed. That is very important. Now, that is number one. Number two, the other area of value chain is the intermediate, materials or food or products. That is the other area. I'm just trying to break in the value chain. All right. I think there's some noise coming from somewhere. Then the other thing is selling the finished products. Now, Wekoba, that is very important. And I think they still have some job to do with explaining the value chain and how people can fit in. But now, this is something that I wanted Mr. Kamau to answer. Although Mr. Kamau could not connect with us from Nyandarua, he helped, some dairy companies to set up processing plants. He did it with Githunguri Dairy, Limuru, and a few other companies. But if you look at the success of manufacturing, it has actually, the success stories are with cooperatives, people who have come together and teamed up and did some group work. All right, 10 people, 30 people. In Israel they call it kibushi, or groups coming together and pooling resources and making it a power force or a force to the market. Could that be the only way to the entry of manufacturing? That is, I'm just thinking out of the box. Do we need to see cooperatives, people pooling together and, pooling resources? I have one cow, another person has one dairy cow. We come together, we have 50, and now we can command the market. That is number one. Number two, even when it comes to marketing, back in times, we had cooperatives that were only formed to market the products. Do we need to go back to that time? Or because one person standing alone, it's becoming a challenge? What's your advice, Wekoba, as a trainer? Do we need to go back to the cooperative movements where people were pulling resources together and commanding the market or controlling the market? Or how would we approach it? Because if you look at it, even what you're talking about here, we are giving examples of big companies. We are yet to hear of smaller ones that are making it big time. Well, Koba, elaborate that and talk about what Johnny has talked about as we come to a close. We are ending in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, I think cooperatives is about the power of unity. So if we are going to fight the big multinationals at that level, then unity cannot be, the power of unity cannot be taken for granted. So we must, at some point, the challenge that we have with Kenyans also is everybody wants to be a small king in his own small domain. Okay. So I think we need to humble ourselves and realize that let's shun that selfishness and then come together. If we are in a common field, is there a way we can work together and be able to use our unity to marshal and do something that is big and mega? That way we are able to go forward. And then the other thing that I need to also mention is that we have, for example, when you look at the savings base in the banks and the cooperatives is in trillions. Yet people are keeping this money because a lot of them do not have a place where they can invest that money. Now, if we can create that confidence for people to unlock those savings that are in cooperatives, those savings that are lying in bank accounts, then you see that local industrialization is going to be funded. Now, the best way that we can attract that level of funding is when we can be united. Because when you look at the SACCOs, for example, the cooperatives, they will entrust money, lend credit more easily to an organized group than to an individual. So when we go as individuals, you find that we are not able to access, as startups, we are not able to access money from institutions. But if we can organize ourselves and then be able to push, for example, look at the value chain, for example, mobilize ourselves as a group, take up that entire value chain, and then make proposals and start working towards in a small way, then we are able to attract funding to ourselves. So I think that is the way to go. Unity has to be the way to go.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm going to get Johnny give a parting shot, but before then, I think I would want to say this. Leadership is needed for us to unlock manufacturing. We have seen quite a lot of potential from the Juakali sector. The other day, Aidan Mohammed announced 500 million being put into the Kariobangi light industries. That's quite a huge amount. But the point is, people are standing alone and they are fighting alone. It is very hard to penetrate alone sometimes. And what I think we should do, and this is my thoughts tonight, is we should identify people who are manufacturing different products, or if I am manufacturing a particular product, who supplying what material that I need, then try and connect with the value chain. That way, I will not have to fight to market or to sell myself, to sell as a manufacturer. And that is where Johnny was talking about retail market. I don't have to be the retailer, the manufacturer, and also the source of supply. So I would advise, my point is, I would advise people to connect, form a value chain that they can benefit from. If that is not possible, wherever you are, possibly you are in a church setup, you are in a cooperative, you're in a circle, it is very important. These are a call to action. We need to form teams and groups to unlock manufacturing. There's so much potential right now that we can only unlock if we are united. Look at the fish industry. Fish is so cheap. If you're doing a fish pond and selling it, I did that statistic some time back, and you sell fish at 250, that is a kg. But if you processed fish into fish fillets, you'll be able to sell 1 kg at around 600 shillings. That is value. But then I cannot unlock the value chain if I'm alone. So my call tonight is unity. My call tonight is, again, I have people from the bank here. I've seen quite a number of people from the microfinance industry. Please let us support young entrepreneurs who are going to manufacturing. And not only that, we need people who are here and they have access to the government. The Ministry of Industrialization has to unlock manufacturing. We have the carvings from Mukambani, which are now not moving as much because we don't consume them locally. They are consumed by foreigners. And now people are stuck. How can we buy made from Kenya or made in Kenya? If we can have that solidarity, and wherever we are, we support the local manufacturers, that would be a great, great deal. So I think I'm supporting completely what Wakoba is saying. We need to support what is happening, who is manufacturing what. And if someone, as a farm of tomato, we need to buy from them and process the tomato sauce. Wakoba, that is what you're doing. So Johnny, give us one word if you have a parting shot, then I'll come back to Wakoba to give us a parting shot for tonight. Next week, we are hosting Mr. George Washuri. He's in real estate. He has a story to tell, and we would want to hear about his startup story. So, Johnny, do you have a parting shot or comment that you want to throw to us?
Yes, just before I throw in the comment, there's a gentleman here called Mr. Korir, and he's brought in a question on cartels. Maybe next time we may talk about cartels, because he's saying he's in production, but the pay is so disappointing because of the cartels. Before you can answer that, there's something else I wanted to throw in as a spanner in the works. You see, part of the profits of the big boys, the big manufacturers, comes from their distribution network. If you see how much mileage one lorry does in a day, distributing their products. So their strength is really in distribution. And I'm wondering, I would really want, by the way, Mr. Wehomba, I've known you for years. There's a time you gave a presentation in our church in 2012 and you wowed us so much. It's such a pleasure to see you. We love you very much. And I loved your book, Industrialize Yourself. Thank you so much. I just want to know how can we take advantage of the distribution network? Like now, maybe I might not go into manufacturing, but I'm seeing a need in distribution that maybe I can take your product and distribute it to other markets that are not necessarily the supermarkets. You know, maybe to the person at the shop in the rural area, I can take it to them directly, so that they also don't have the cost of coming to buy from the wholesaler in town. So how can I take advantage of that in the distribution, while you also answer on Corey's question? Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's great to see you, Mr. Homba. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, and I'm honored to hear that. And you should get a hold of the other book. There are two books: Wealth Transfer and Neglected Value: Why Africa Must Choose Industrialization. They'll be a blessing to you. Now, allow me to mention this. I think Geoffrey had mentioned about the issue of value chains. Now, within the value chain, there's a huge opportunity, a huge gap and a huge opportunity when it comes to the marketing aspect of it. So for the people who are in the marketing, I think they also need to develop confidence in local products, because I've dealt with a lot of people, marketing people who do marketing, and anytime you approach them and tell them, I would like you to market my product, they're like, I've never heard of it. People only like, you know, they already have a fixated mind on the large multinational products and a lot of imported products. So I think the marketing people should also develop confidence in our product. Now, how will they develop is when we manufacture products that are good quality, that are also competitive in terms of pricing. So we also need to do our part and also encourage them to do their part. Then allow me to mention two very important things that I think must be mentioned for this meeting to be complete. Now, Geoffrey, this is a challenge to the developers, and I think this one you should throw to Mr. Washuri and tell him he's doing a good job. Now, developers have been very busy developing houses, and there's almost a boom on that. There are a lot of houses, the uptake is slow. But the other biggest challenge that startup manufacturers are facing, and I've not heard anybody mention that about, is the scarcity of production floor space. If you want to go down to do manufacturing, it is a nightmare. The costs are very high, the terms are very exorbitant. So we need to have people who are manufacturing floor space that is reasonable. I mean, with 15,000, I can get maybe 250 or 300 square feet that I can start my production outfit that has amenities that are specifically designed to support manufacturing. So for the developers, I think this is a challenge to you. Instead of looking at people who are just doing 9,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, yet as a startup, I only need 250 square feet. So we need to see such innovative outfits that come up. And I know with developers, you won't go wrong. You'll find people who will come in. Then to the MFIs, the institutions who are in financing, I think the other challenge is you also need to invest in industrial training. Invest in training people on how to start up cottage industries, so that begin to create clients for yourself. Don't wait for people to establish themselves before they make sense to you. So I think that is also a challenge. If there's any CEO who's in microfinance or in the banking institution, I think that's a challenge to you. Invest in us so that we can train people and build capacity for these young people to start the industries, so we can prepare clients for you, so that by the time you have conditions for somebody to access funding, they have to at least have attained this kind of level of success. So let's prepare those people, and then we'll expand the client base.
All right, thank you very much, Wekoba. And please, before we quit, give us examples of products that you're making already with in your company.
Oh, currently I'm doing organic soaps. Within the soap factory, we're doing organic soaps. We're doing body lotions. We're doing body creams. We are doing lip balm. We're also doing deodorant. We're also doing sunscreen. And
oh no, we are not losing you, Wekoba. Can you? That's a point I wanted him to finish with. Wekoba, can you hear me? All right. He has to check his internet because Wekoba does very interesting stuff. You can make soap from your house. You can deodorants. I mean, lip balm. Okay, that's interesting. Just trying to see whether he is able to come back. But thank you very much. Let me give a parting shot. If Mr. Koba his internet has hung, but it's okay. So the point is, guys, you can start from where you are. You can do something with what you have. You don't need 100,000 to start a manufacturing company. You can start small. The market is right where you are. If you have a community, you have a church, there's an estate you live in, there's a neighborhood where you are, you can actually start processing something or manufacturing something, and you can sell it to your neighborhood. Don't wait until you have so much money to start. The problem we have in Kenya is fear. Do not fear. Fear is the biggest hindrance that will make you not to start anything. The point is, don't procrastinate. Start. When you